Like, fucking, come on, have fun, laugh, smile. And I was like,
you own a dispensary and you're gay? What else you got under your fucking sleeve?
Shoot a couple ropes of friendship across his butt cheeks. And
that's literally the worst.
What the fuck are we even doing here?
What are we doing here, man? Finding God, getting chips.
So what are you smoking on today?
Just some cheap weed that I've been getting from a store called Clearance Cannabis.
I've heard of them. As long as you're not going to live well, that's okay with me.
Oh, really? Yeah.
That's our competitors.
I don't. I don't participate in the industry, as people here will say.
I love how they call it the industry too. Like, we're selling weed. Calm down.
Yeah, I live in Los Angeles, where saying the industry is a real thing, and then it's the elitism behind the way it gets said. And
I'm in the industry actually, so
I didn't move to Denver
to
be part of anybody's elitism, and so I don't mind.
God, I feel like I might have done that a couple of times.
People do.
Well, when you have an owner badge, you have a little bit of like status in the.
When you're young and proud, and I'm sure clearly I did it as a young comedian. I was obnoxious, and the faster I rose, the more I was like.
You kind of humble yourself the more you see to it, because you're like, oh, am I being gay? My bad.
For like me, I'll maybe humble myself, or more likely get humbled. For some of my peers, I don't, or our peers, I don't know that being, When was the last time Tracy Morgan got humbled? Or
I
Craig
think there was
Robinson.
a truck involved. I don't know.
Right. I guess, that's real true, but
I love you, Tracy Morgan, but shit.
That's more of an accident, and I don't know that it was his fault or the course of his own action, but Craig Robinson would be another fun example of like when the guy just has been living on cloud nine and doing whatever he's wanted to for 10 or 15 years now. And
damn, he has really.
He just looks happier and happier every time I see him doing a commercial or a program or and he's just doing more and more. It's like, this time I'm DJing pizzas.
That's right. He is in the Pizza Hut commercials now.
Whatever he wants. He really just likes to entertain people. He puts on a show.
I think that's.
I worked with him in comedy clubs, and then saw the show progress to the point where, he got so popular he could move on to theaters, but then B, the show got so big, it's like, man, this needs to be in a place where people don't have to move their chicken fingers out of the way. They want to get up and boogie in the middle of what you're doing.
I mean, that's so respectable that he does that too. Being able to do comedy and music at the same time, I feel
the whole thing, I think
it's other, comedians will call it a gimmick sometimes, and you're like, dude, can you do that?
Yeah. I was, as a kid, I definitely, took on those kinds of traits of calling out hacks or whatnot. But
I think we all do as youngins, because we're like, I can fucking do that. That shit's hack. Fuck.
Right.
And then you end up doing the same thing, and you're like, I get it now. It's a trick in the bag.
You learn the word hack, and then you want to be able to use it. So, eventually you overuse it to figure out how and when and where to use it. And so that's how new comedians get into conversations about laughs per minute. Like, when you've gotten to that conversation, buckle up. You're in year 2.
This is Batman year 2, man. Come on.
Wait till you get to the idea of
you just still don't even have the signal yet.
Yeah, that's gonna fuck you up when you're like,
oh man, that's funny. Sorry. Yeah, and I've noticed a lot of that just being a new booty in this game is that the resentment that people have just trying to come up and thinking they're better than others, and it's a weird
True.
game.
To
But then
stand
you do find the nice people who are like, yo man, come on, let's help each
right,
other out. Yeah.
right. But
Not a crab in a bucket.
to stand in the middle of a group of people and go, I'm going to be funnier than anybody else, takes on a personality of, where or welcomes a lot of people who've got the kind of personality that is unwelcoming.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's another thing I wanted to talk about on the cast too.
I know
yeah.
I can be one of those nice guys, and then I also know there's plenty of people who felt my
Felt the
I've
wrath.
left a trail of people wounded by words, and why not? So
I
many
mean,
of them
truth
deserved
hurts.
it.
Yeah, truth hurts. Sometimes, you just gotta say it too, especially if they're being the aggressor in the conversation where they're trying to put themselves above everybody else.
Right.
Yeah,
Or if
yeah,
you've just flopped on a Friday night in front of a hot crowd that I was hosting,
true.
you know,
It's true.
tough luck if I point that out.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm gonna
searching
point
for a
that out
laugh.
if it happens. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm
yeah.
searching for a laugh big enough to recover what you just broke.
hmm
So,
Well, and sometimes that's the best way too, because you got to regain that audience. You got to be like, dude, did you just see that?
yeah, they
And
did.
that's
In
sometimes
fact,
the
they
easiest
did.
way. Yeah.
Really, they really saw it.
And as long as you acknowledge it and you're like, oh, I'm on your side too. That was garbage. Let's go.
yeah,
That's
it's
a
a
good little
Friday
trick in
night.
the bag. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Well, God damn it. I don't know where Eric is. He should be here. I guess we're just gonna kind of start it out. We've already really started, I guess. But the name of the show is What Are We Doing Here? It's really just
It's
open-ended.
very apropos right now.
Yeah, it's
What
just
are we? What are
yeah.
we doing here?
What are we doing here as a podcast? What are we doing here as a species, as people? Very open-ended. You could be funny if you want. We could be serious. It's it's a podcast.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. I'll try not to be too serious.
You could be serious if you want, dude. We're gonna talk about gay things, what it's like to be
Okay.
gay, and first experiences. I would love to hear some awkward experiences. If you've ever gotten like a bigger amount of booty on the road just because you were a comedian. Yeah. Because there's a lot of comics out there who are in it to just like crush puss, and you're like, okay, well, what about the other side? Is there anybody out? Yeah, is there anybody out here just getting dick all the time?
I fucked a lot of straight guys in the 90s when straight guys
Yes.
were a thing.
Yes. These
That's
are the
really,
conversations I want to talk about.
but
Getting straight guys is like, isn't that the best? I don't. It's not like the main goal, but it is very fun. It's like you're getting extra points.
right, it was a thing, in the 90s, it was so controversial and more fun to say at parties or on stage in order to, like,
Get the
and
shock
throughout
value.
the aughts, I guess, the 2000 to 2010. Now it's like if you go to an open mic, it's ridiculous as to how many comedians are like, I'm bisexual.
Mhm.
It gets to the point where the seventh person who thought that was going to be shocking and has based their routine on the idea that bisexuality is going to be shocking is suddenly confronted with the fact that
People
they're
don't
the
care.
seventh.
Yeah,
And
also
it's no longer. It's just.
we've heard it. We've been there. We've done that.
Yeah,
We're
Will and
looking
Grace
for
was
something
98,
new.
bro. Like
Whew, and that new version they brought back, woo-hoo.
it's already gone. The
It didn't
world
work
has,
anymore, because the thing that worked back in 98 and 99 was like the homophobia of it. Like they would kind of make fun of gay culture in a way that it was laughable to straight people, and they're like, haha, look at these silly fags, this is fun.
well,
They're not so
I
bad.
mean, that's definitely your interpretation. I wouldn't interpret that show that way at all. But
They had a lot of good things, but they were also very over the top. Like the whole Jack's character
have you
was,
ever met the real Jack?
I've never met him,
There's
obviously.
there's a real person that was based on, and not for nothing, but it's the same person. And we shared long conversations about how, because it's Jack Deemer, you can check the lawsuit, and then Sean Hayes plays Jack McFarlane, the character, and
Right.
Jack Deemer went to school with and knew the guys who wrote Will and Grace. So those characters are very real, and the Jack McFarlane
Learn
character
something new every day. Shit.
is they often refer to a Rory as well, and so Jack and Rory were two interior decorators. Me and my writing partner lived above Jack's garage, and there was a day where we were watching Oprah talk to the best interior decorators in the Midwest, and I'm sitting with the guy they invented Jack McFarlane about. And Rory, and the two of them are being so funny about making fun of these Midwestern interior decorators, mostly women who are, like showing off their fancy McMansions. And
the Karens of, yeah.
So we're howling with laughter at those two. And then a long conversation about Rory came out in the 70s or early 80s, but as a teen in high school, and in New York, it's probably the only place in the world you could be out in the United States at the high school level. And I recall him saying to me, in those days, they just sent you to the fashion high school. That was the code for what you did with gay kids. And that is where he constructed and where his personality shaped. Jack Deemer came out during, and I'm using my hands because we not only by age coming out, but up the coastline of New York. So Rory, New York City, Jack Deemer from central Massachusetts, myself from New Hampshire, and 5 to 10 years apart, and very different lifestyle or very different cultures, all winding up in the same space, the dawn of Will and Grace, and watching it air. One of us, it's about him, so Jack,
I take back everything I said then.
Right.
I didn't know that aspect of it.
It's to me, it's I remember that show. I feel like it summed up one era. Like it just covered. We're gay. This is it. Here we are. And it let America go. Okay.
It certainly helped me out. As a young gay man trying to figure out what he liked, being able to see characters represented like that on the show was amazing.
Yeah, that's the being seen and seeing people, and that's something we learn about other cultures as well. It's like that's why it's important to include diversity
in Eric hopping on here
in production and whatnot. Hello, Eric.
Hey, there he is.
Hi,
how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I started a little bit early with Chuck. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I got my second COVID shot like 2 days ago.
Oh no, I heard that one's the one that kicks your ass.
Oh my God, it's so kicking my ass.
Oh,
yesterday, I had to call off the things that I had planned, and I was in bed all day yesterday. And then today I feel kind of like 90% closer to where I was, but I'm still feeling
still in that icky phase. Yeah. That's what I've heard about it. Sorry, my boyfriend's just came down. They were saying hi.
Oh, way to brag that you have a boyfriend.
Right. I'm sorry. My bad. They both came down because they were trying to escape the maid, and they didn't realize I was doing a podcast.
So you have a boyfriend and a maid. Okay.
I mean,
that's awesome.
I'm not trying to brag or anything, but
I love your sweatshirt.
I mean, we were coming on here to talk about comedy and being gay. It's a perfect sweater.
Sweet.
But I can't take credit for it. This is something I saw in the bonfire. Dan Soder was wearing this, and I was like, that's one of the funniest sweaters I've ever seen. Where do I buy that? And they hooked it up. So shout out to the bonfire. Thank you guys.
The thing is, if somebody is grossed out by cum, I've dated guys before that were grossed out by it, and I always thought, you know what, this isn't gonna last. It's not gonna last. How could you not? This is what we're all doing it for. How could you be grossed out by that?
Well, here's a good question. Do you like loads in the mouth? Because there are guys that love it, and then there are guys who are just like, nope, not for me. And I kind of fall on the latter side.
So you don't like it?
I mean, I'll take it, but I'm not gonna swallow it. I'm sorry. I'm just not there yet.
I'm so there.
Oh.
But only Only if the caveat is that I really have to like them, and like the times that it's been the most exciting to do that has been when I was in love with them and I wanted to be as close with them as possible. And then it just really takes on like, an intensity that I really like, but I'm not going to swallow somebody that I just,
Yeah,
that
no,
I
you're
just-
not gonna take a hot load in the mouth in the bathroom of the Eagle. Like that's just no, that's too much.
Oh, when in San Diego, the Marines call me Capistrano for the amount I swallow.
Chuck, are you in San Diego?
No, I'm in Denver, Englewood, Colorado, south of Denver.
Oh, nice.
But I lived in Los Angeles and certainly know where San Diego is and Tijuana.
Nice.
In my day, that was if you wanted to fuck a Marine, you could go down to Tijuana.
Oh, this is perfect because I wanted to ask both you guys how growing up in your time, being gay, having to have gaydar rather than having Tinder or Growler, because you really did have to put yourself out there, in order to figure if someone was going to be interested in it, and it could go one of two ways. And I want to hear about those kind of ways.
If someone dances with their hands above their head in a nightclub in the 90s, that was the easiest way for me to figure out who the gayest straight guy was.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you go to a gay bar and it's just a raining men, but I'm from Boston originally, which is why I'm funny. And the clubs, just the general New Englanders are pretty stubborn about how they're not too big on changing. So guys just sort of do the elbow shuffle dance.
That's the two-step. That's the straight two-step. Yeah.
Maybe it's but these hands, the fists never go, unless it's time for duking it out, but they never go above the shoulder. And then if they do, that was how I knew I just probably want to talk to him.
Yeah, in the olden days, I was more drawn to the guys that were fighting to keep their hands down low. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they were thinking about it that much, then it's go time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if they're that worried about it, then. But I developed my gaydar at a very early age because I was so attracted to men. I still am, of course, but when I was younger, it was horrible. Like I was just obsessed, and so.
We were men who are attracted to men. Like, there's no biology difference there. It's like we're still gonna want to bust a load. If we have that demon nut in us, we will do horrible, despicable things to get it out of us.
So romantic.
I tell it like it is.
I love it. Yeah, I had to. The thing about gaydar is that you really had to do it a lot to get a good sense, but it also forced me to read the room and pick up on cues from other people and kind of visualize how I'm fitting in the whole social strata, and it really gave us a bunch of strengths and tools that we needed to relate to one another. And unfortunately, with Grindr and Scruff and everything being as easy it is now, this whole crop of gays coming up no longer have that.
They don't. No, I've noticed. I think I was on the brim of like, the last kind of generation to have analog porn before internet, things like that, where, obviously I wasn't hooking up at like 8 or 9 years old, but I was definitely noticing the other guys out there who weren't noticing girls. And it was one of those things where like, oh, okay, I get this. I understand this. And then once Grindr and all that came out, it just opened up a whole can of worms. So we're like, oh, I can get dick anywhere at any time. Yes. I love the future.
Chuck, I lived in Boston for many years. I lived in there in the 90s and into the 2000s. And
where at?
I lived in, when I left Boston, I was living in Somerville, but I lived in Back Bay, and I lived in the South End, of course, and I lived in Cambridge and Brookline. You could do like a really boring duck tour of all my apartments.
That is sort of right around the whole rim of the north side of the city, from Somerville over to Cambridge and such. So
yeah, it was nice. I mean, I got sober in Boston, and it was the best city to get sober in because there's so much drinking there.
Right, and
I
then
was
a
gonna
lot
say.
of certainly a lot of meetings. Boston comedians were either Irish, Italian, or sober. So it was like, that's guaranteed the act you were going to see tonight. You know, it's either somebody going, "Oh, I'm Irish," and here's 20 minutes on mothers and church, or or I'm Italian, and turns out mothers and church, and then I'm sober. So starts
That's
with church,
hilarious.
then gets to mothers.
I never
Huh.
did. I never did comedy in Boston. I didn't start till really late in life. I started in my 40s when I came out to LA, but I wish I had started younger back when I was, in my 30s. That would have been primo.
Shit,
Oh my
I'm
God.
just starting out now in my 30s. So, and I'm worried because I'm seeing all these younger acts who started in their 20s who are like, they're already 7 years in, and I was like, cool, I've done like 9 open mics. This is fucking great.
Right. Well, your
So
journey is yours,
yeah,
and
no,
that's their
it's super
journey.
inspiring to hear that you started in your 40s and you were like, hey, I'm gonna follow this passion that I have because it's not gonna go away. It's I know that's how I feel. I'm like, I have to at least try to do this thing that I really love, and if I don't, I would fucking be wasting my life, I think.
I
I
met
I feel like I would die if I didn't do stand up. It's already been. I mean, I've done a couple sets this past couple weeks, but prior to that, it has been fucking miserable not doing stand up. Just
Why do you think I
miserable.
started a podcast? I was like, I need a mic. I need to have some kind of a mic and practice because you can't do this. I was telling Chuck earlier, like you can't do this like hip hop and just rap into a mirror. You have to have an audience.
Absolutely.
It's the back and forth that is comedy. You tell a joke, somebody laughs. That's what it is.
that somebody generally needs to be a stranger for
Yeah.
the art to
Yeah.
really work. It's an audience of strangers generally. I wouldn't deny anybody, I guess building up a series of shows, packing a house with their friends and making them laugh and calling it comedy, but
Right.
the real challenge is when you're faced with somebody who's paying
Somebody's saying,
and
hey,
has
I'm here.
no idea.
Be funny for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let's go.
It's 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
The show was meant to start.
I've
I've had-
paid for my 2 drinks.
Exactly.
Let's go. Be
I
funny.
have not laughed yet.
God. So what were your guys' first instincts that you were like, oh, I want to do this comedy thing? What was the first time that you like really got a big laugh or thought that maybe this was?
Well, for me, I was a restaurant manager for many, many years, and I worked at probably 40 locations for one particular company, and I found that, and I was assistant general manager, so they would kind of plot me into places that needed help and fixing up, basically, and so I would get in there and hit the ground running, and I'd have to be up in front of them all the time, and so I was constantly kind of saying little things and making up little sing-song games and just being myself. And I noticed after a few weeks of being in a restaurant somewhere, I noticed that people were starting to say some of the shit that I was saying.
Nice.
And saying like these little made up words that I would use that would just, and I just thought, there must be something there. And so an employee of mine in Studio City, which is right outside of LA here, she suggested that I take a comedy writing class because I had a little extra money and I was looking for something to do. And I just took it. And I thought, at the end of it, there was going to be a big showcase. And I literally was planning on not doing the showcase because I was scared to death. And I didn't tell anybody in the group that I was just going to puss out at the last minute. And I wrote my jokes. I had 6 minutes of material, went there the night of thinking I was going to walk out. But the minute I got there, I'm like, I can't walk out. There's no, my name's on the program. It's going to look worse if I walk out than if I go up there.
You made it that far. Why would you? Yeah.
But I literally, that's the only thing that got me in the door was the idea that I was just going to walk out and not do it. And so I did do it, and I felt like I was leaving my body. I was so afraid. And, but man, I just got that first laugh, and it just felt like I felt this wave wash over me. And I was just like, oh, I never want to do anything else. I was
Nice.
immediately bit.
Nice. Chuck, what about you?
The first time I recorded in my living room like a cassette of comedy, so I was trying to do
Just-
it,
just do it. Yeah,
like
yeah.
at like probably sophomore year of high school. So
Damn, that early.
that's definitely, the clearly an attempt at trying to do comedy. In fact, I loaned somebody the tape because there was something else recorded on the other side, and he said he played that recording and then never shut off the tape, and then suddenly there's me doing comedy, and I said, "What'd you think?" And he goes, "You cursed a lot." So, I mean, I didn't know what else to do, and searching for words was cursing, So I probably just brought up topics and cursed about them, and then years later, I flunked out of college, is how it really happened, and I was getting laughs at the dinner table, and my former sister-in-law had said, you should be a comedian, and the next day I called the comedy club, and I've told the story before. The woman said I was so pathetic that she had to book me right away.
Oh
And
no.
we're still
Wow.
friends, I had just clerked for a congressman. I asked, how does one become a comedian? And, if you know comedy clubs, she's in the upstairs of and that sounds fancier, just like
In the upstairs.
she's in a closet behind, essentially, behind everything of what once was a strip club because of the amount of mirrors, and is now Nick's Comedy Stop. So she's literally at like a card table that's been there for her desk for 15 years, and the owners are mafia that are laundering money by owning a comedy club.
Yep.
So
Something
here's
shady
this
going on there.
little
Yeah.
kid from New Hampshire, and I wasn't little, I was huge, but I call up and, how does one become a comedian? And she explained it to me. And I remember her saying, like, now, next time you call me, I'm going to be mean and rude, because I'm mean and rude. But you were so nice today, I decided to help you. But this is when you call, Mondays at 12, and to sign up for spots. And she goes, and I don't have time to talk to you. So I'll be mean and rude and call me on Monday. And, I'd call to get my spots or to sign up or do whatever. And, the rest was, I clearly loved it. So
Yep.
pursued it.
Yeah, mine was
awesome.
similar to yours, where I took a public speaking class
How'd that
in
go?
college. It was fucking
They work on enunciation in there?
nope. That's all me. I think that's the strain I've been smoking. I'm sorry.
Right.
But yeah, I was taking that and I was terrified because I didn't want to speak in public. No one does. And was trying to get through a segment that I was talking about and lost all train of thought and just went on a riff, and I started to get people laughing, and I noticed that feeling and like that and that alone was enough to get the story through and just get it done. And from there I was like, okay, I think that would be a fun career, but it was just always too terrifying, And then I saw you, Chuck. You were the one who I saw you open for, can't remember who it was, because you had just killed it. And
Right.
I remember going out to the bar and you walked up and I was like, hey, what's up? Can I get your number? Because you had said you were gay. And I was like, I think I want to bang this dude. And yeah, the rest was history.
Oh my God, did you
Right.
guys bang?
Did we, Chuck?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, that's awesome.
One of us was memorable.
I hope it was I hope it was you, because I sure remember it.
Oh my
man.
God.
You're blushing, Hunter.
I'm just thinking back on how fun that was, because I mean
Right.
that was the first time that I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna bang this person, this like performer, and, and just went after it. And it was one of those kind of like the secret things where you just put it out there into the universe. And somehow I ended up getting your number. We went to the Wrangler and yeah, had a lot of fun that one night.
I'm not propelling the story any
might
further.
get edited. I don't know.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, where do you guys want to go from here?
How is the comedy scene in Denver? I always hear really good things.
Comedy Works downtown is one of the most amazing venues to play at. I don't know, Chuck, can you weigh in on that? Because it's just like the perfect
count
setup.
the seats.
The seats suck. I'm not gonna lie. For an audience member, there's a couple of poles that are in the way, and then the seats are a little bit too close. But
the capacity is 290, and they get 360 in there with Chappelle, and they have a problem with holding back bonuses. And Red Rocks is not a $75 gig. 2 reasons why I fired them. So I worked the Comedy Works. I know those brick walls intimately. I sold a lot of beer there. I told a lot of jokes, but I love this art form too much to let someone like that do that to the art, even if Dave Chappelle says it's the greatest place ever. He should.
I was just
he should speak up about
venue-wise.
fair seating and
Yeah.
paying the local acts a decent wage. A lot of Bernie Sanders voting headliners play that club, and they don't quite give a shit about what their opening act is getting paid. But out there on social media, they want every other pizza shop in America to have to pay $15 an hour and provide health insurance when they would never do that for their opening act. So, art set aside, people are human. It's a business. And when you're charging people that much for a beer, to the people of Denver who will gladly go to Whole Foods, just pay fair rates.
That's a good point. I like that you brought it up, Chuck. I like that you went there.
My name is Chuck Roy. I'd gladly name them, but it's already been covered on other podcasts.
And we don't need to put anybody on blast, especially when I'm still trying to come up here.
Right. I wouldn't send this around to them.
Oh no. No. I think about 30 people will see this. Don't worry. We're good. So you can say whatever you want. What do you think about the new scene in Houston that's popping up? Has it heard anybody's opinions?
Houston or Austin?
Austin, sorry.
Right.
I've heard decent things about Austin, but the thing is that so many people just plugged themselves in there as a way to get away from LA, and so it's a smaller pond. So I'm not sure that there's going to be more opportunities per se. I feel like there's a lot of opportunities in Los Angeles, but you just got to really work for them. You really have to scrounge around for them. But they're
how's that
definitely
going with
there.
COVID and everything? Because I know it's been harder, and they're just now starting to open back up a little bit here and there.
Well, there's been outdoor shows which are really popular. I mean, even when it gets cold, people will, they'll put their coats on and take little heaters and whatnot. And I mean, I had an outdoor show that I was running for a while, and then I had to stop it in December when things got really bad COVID wise.
Right.
But there's a company called Don't Tell Comedy, which my friend Kyle runs. And they're nationwide now, but they have a great reputation in Los Angeles, and their shows are always packed. I've done 3 of them in the past 2 weeks, and they've all been sold out.
Hell yeah, that's awesome.
So
we're just opening up back here. I think I just got news that I think Comedy Works South is opening back up, or is finally opened back up. So like 50
they've been open for some time. I'm not sure when the Denver Improv opens. I have a lot of empathy for people who are new and dying for stage time, so I can grasp how they're up on the latest place to go be 40th in line at an open mic. And so I'm glad that's back. I'm a comedian for life. I've certainly accomplished more than I ever wanted to. And having fired enough places, I've made the choice over and over again in my career between, so-called what other people perceive as success, and what do I want out of it? You know, and as far as stage time goes, I was okay with transferring right away to Zoom, and I get a lot out of my Zoom shows. I understand that
You
it
do
is
like the
not
Zoom
in
shows.
person. Yeah, what are you gonna do? You know, it's I, I don't sit around and lament about the status of things. You know, so the
Okay.
country's shut down. So why sit around fighting Zoom by saying it's not stand-up comedy with a full house and, you know, people on top of each other laughing? And correct. You know, like who would compare it to that? It's people on a screen and an opportunity to make them laugh. If it works for you, enjoy it. If it doesn't, you know,
So do
find
you
it.
have people mute their mics, or do you like to hear their laughter in real time? Because I felt like that was one of the things about Zoom comedy that was really kind of hurting it, was that you couldn't get the back and forth really quickly.
I let people turn their microphone on. We walked audiences through, you know, how they could make their choice
All right.
to enjoy the show. Long ago, I'm an old TV warm-up, so
Yeah.
I got the science of heating up a crowd down, and I called another headliner who's an even older comedian than me, and been hosting for 30 years. So the two of us just problem solved, and I long ago gave up on things like reading the rules to the customer. It's again, they're paying 20 a drink. And here in Denver, the culture has Red Rocks. So you got to tell people how to go to a show if they're over 25, you know? And so if you treat them that way, you can attract an audience that really knows how to go to a show. So
Oh yeah.
I felt like right away, charge money, raise money for a charity, and, you know, deliver as much of a comedy club experience as I could. And like I learned a lot real fast. Folks are at home, they got a dog, you know, so they keep their microphone off, and you can watch them laugh, and they're hitting each other and falling over each other. And I'm not at a stage where I need to hear that. I understand what that sounds like. And, you know, through conversation in the chat, I found they're like, we have a dog, we can't turn on our microphone, it'll disrupt the show. And so, you know, that's how the culture will develop on Zoom mics, is people will sort of learn how to join the show, and you can definitely develop an audience of people, you know, enjoying it.
Oh yeah.
And the technology is going to improve tenfold year over year. So
Yeah, I think that's the thing too. Is this is still such like an infancy of what it is, and people are still figuring it out. And you know, I do think there is a possibility that it will become a bigger thing. But do you think it'll be, you know, that big when comedy actually does come back and we
yeah.
have the full thing? You think it'll still be around?
Have you seen a cell phone lessen the amount of cameras on the back?
That's true.
No. You know,
true.
so are the phone companies going like, hey, we're cutting back to 4G because we heard you? You know, no, it's 5G. People going to your local brewery show in Houston, in Connecticut, in Florida, have friends and family from around the globe that are going to want to be there for Becca's birthday. And so you'll be able to invite your friends to karaoke with you. You'll be able to
Ooh, that
invite
feels
your
real
friends to go
awkward though.
bowling with you. It's because it's,
If
you
you're
know, if you're
karaokeing with
the,
the phone, like ha ha.
it's 1.4 billion people a day that use YouTube or Facebook. So don't tell them what they're doing. They're free people. They're going to do what they damn well want. And if they're in, you know, Asia, and Becca is important to them, they're going to wake up and log in on the device that Becca chooses to broadcast for her birthday. And there's no way that's going away. That
Yeah.
people are on Pelotons and getting personalized like training, but suddenly they're going to forget about that because the vaccines are around. You can see how I predicted. I think that there's so many reasons why people are going to want to have that customer. I know I saw you holding up your hand, but people are going to buy stands. The venues already have them. You know, so it'll be incumbent upon many of the venues to want to provide that, you know, that kind of you know, like that kind of service to people.
All right. Huh. That's very insightful. I like that. Because to me, I felt like it was kind of a fad for just the time being, where it was, you know, this is what we're going to have to do while we're getting through this. But I can see it lasting and, you know, being another form, another platform for people to get their stuff out there. What do you think, Eric?
I think as long as they, and I'm assuming they are working on the technological glitches that we've all come across. And I think that the reason why they're all still there is because it's still a relatively new type, you know, thing that we have, this Zoom and this video conferencing and all that. And I think the limitations that we had before are becoming less and less. And as long as you're able to have, you know, a clear conversation with somebody and not have it drag or, you know, get frozen, or, you know, as long as there's a smoother transition between people, I think that that's one of the biggest hindrances of Zoom as far as I'm concerned. But the one show that I did a Zoom show, and I loved it. And you know, there was like maybe 50 people there, and, you know, so I mean, I feel like Chuck did too. You know, like if those people showed up, my goodness, of course I'm gonna do my best for them. You know.
Oh yeah.
And it was rewarding, even if I couldn't really hear them laugh per se, but I could see all their faces, and I knew that they were listening, and that was key. So, given my druthers, I'd much rather be live and in person, but I don't necessarily see Zoom as a bad thing.
Nice. Oh yeah.
The Zoom scene has already seen like its boom and bust. So in the same, like Denver had a comedy boom for the longest time, and it's still, you know, somewhat experiencing it. But as it was building its reputation for being a spot, like I recall being at open mics and just, I mean, every week you're meeting a new comedian that's moved here, and then first it's exciting, and then after a while you're just like, yeah, you know, you almost feel like on the Oregon Trail, like, yeah, just I heard you. You're gonna go over the mountains. Got it. It's good. Understood. Oregon, sure. Just park over there next to all the other people, you know, and sign up on the sheet. You'll notice that you're number 41. So, you know, I recall when open mics here in the city had, you know, a trouble getting 7, 8 people to sign up, you know, and then some of the hottest open mics were, you know, packed full of dive bars like the Squire and
White Whale Room.
You long before that, young Chuck, you're adorable.
I know. Shut up.
When the Squire was popping, that's when like Adam, Kate, and Holland, Ben Roy, and those guys were absolute rooks. And Adam being, you know, from the town, and a popular young kid in 24, 25, all of his friends are packing into the room and talking through anybody who doesn't interest them. All the young people are just like having a great time, but it's an open mic. They didn't pay a thing. We're drinking PBR, and you had to master a technique to get a hold of them. And if you could, then you know, that crowd is roaring with you. And then, you know, next comedian goes up, and people were so upset about the Squire or whatnot, and how challenging it was. And, you know, then I could see that same sort of dialogue through Zoom mics. If you're part of the Displaced Comedians Facebook, I was on there when there were a couple hundred people, and now there's 7,000. And so you could just see the conversation go through all the stages that Denver comedy did in 10 years, but you know, it was by July, they were, you know, like experiencing certain conversations. And then, you know, now it's like such a scene there's comedians from the Zoom scene that really, when they come to our shows, they're all saying hello to each other. They know each other from being.
Yeah, no, it creates a community.
Mics.
And I certainly believe it helps podcasting too. Like, look at what's happening right now. We're all able to have this conversation. We don't have to be in the same room. Certainly helps, but you know, this has been fun. And we're talking about the thing that we're on. You know, so it's kind of weird and meta. So by the way, Eric, the name of the podcast is What Are We Doing Here? I forgot to tell you that.
I picked that up from the email.
Good. At least you
That's
got that
cute.
part. But yeah, so one of the questions is, what do you think we're doing here? Just like as a species, as a person, as a comedian,
Oh, like metaphorically or
it,
literally?
whatever you want, dealer's choice.
Well, I think the easy answer is, and this is very Pollyanna, but I really feel like the what are we doing here is we gotta love each other and help each other all the time, all the time.
I like
And
that.
I feel like it's not an easy job, and I think a lot of people start trying to help others and do the work, and they find that it's challenging. It's hard. It's hard to do it, but the rewards are just so. I mean,
I get it.
I can't
I
even
love it.
describe the rewards. So I really feel like that's why we're put on here. Love each other and help each other.
Well,
And then the cute ones, I fuck them.
hell yeah. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on here. Just speaking about that whole helping each other out thing. You didn't have to come on this podcast. You didn't know me. I just kind of I knew you from Craig Conant's podcast. This is how I found you, and started following you and was like, dude, this guy's cute. He's funny. I'm gonna say hi, see if he responds, and you did. And you were being a
Nice.
nice, loving guy, and that's a lot of what this podcast is about. Is just putting out that love and just figuring out what are we doing here.
That's
Chuck,
awesome.
did I get to ask you that one yet? What do you
No,
think we're doing here?
a podcast interview.
Oh, come on. Salty puss over here. Eric came through with this nice loving one. Kind of hard to follow that one up.
Appreciate that. His answer isn't wrong, but
No, it's not. There's no wrong answer to it.
apparently
just
mine
like-
is. This is what I expect during a podcast interview. Is sort of a open-ended conversation based on a series of topics. So we were coached, or you told us what you wanted to talk about in the typical sense that when I'm invited to do a podcast interview.
No,
It didn't,
crushed it so far.
and then I guess like if I was new to these, I'd have been more concerned or prepared, like I better have the right thing to say or whatnot. In the end, we're entertaining 30 of your friends.
Yeah, what are we doing here?
Or the amount of people you can watch in the YouTube, like how many people we've entertained.
Yep.
Also helping you figure out how do you want to
How
use
to
a
navigate these little
podcast.
waters. This is like my
What-
9th episode. So
Right.
I really appreciate it. I still don't know what I'm doing here.
Yeah,
Still
I
trying to
didn't,
figure it out as we go along.
that's just my my personality. It's like I've been I'm always the one calling somebody going like, I have this idea, show, and will you try it with me? And so when somebody else invites me to theirs, it's like you try to show up and go, okay, that like I understand.
Kind of like Eric was saying, being a caring person and putting out that love, helping other people's out, not being a crab in a bucket. That's
Maybe try not to be a diva. Like
Mhm.
I'm not a drag queen, so there's not much of a need to be a diva. And then like nobody's getting uppity, so there's also no reason to be a diva. But sometimes there's a need to be a diva, and I don't know how to do that too.
Well, when Craig asked me to do his podcast, I was a little familiar with it, and I heard a couple snippets of past episodes, but I didn't realize that on every show he asks his guests if they have like a horror story about pooping their pants.
That's my
And I'm
favorite
like-
part. That's why I fell in love with his episodes, because I was like, oh, who does
I'm like, I am a gentleman in his 50s, and I'm
Right.
going to come here on an afternoon and talk about soiling myself. I had no story because the last time I did it was in, kindergarten. Like
Yep.
I just
Right.
I don't have a pants pooping story. I even forget what I talked about instead. Probably a horror story about, someone, because I worked in restaurants for years. So I had one guy that came in and he shat himself, and then he left his underwear with the poo in it he wrapped it up and just set it on the vanity in the bathroom.
Classy, dude.
Yeah, like what? Just, I mean, throw it away. The waste can was right there, and instead he just puts it on the worst. People
I'm
are
glad
awful.
you brought that up because I have a couple of poop stories for Craig that I'm saving for him.
Nice.
He was like, I need to hear about these. And both of them, for some reason, happened at a Target. Different times in my life, but both happened at a Target. And so,
Wow.
yeah.
It's like
I
a
got a
brand
couple of good
muffin.
Maybe you really need a place to take aim when you
That's what I thought is like
poop yourself.
psychologically. I'm like, oh, here's X marks the spot. You know, if I hit the bullseye, I'm good. I don't know, but it is twice in my life.
I align with Eric in, often trying to be a gentleman. Like clearly I've lived a rock star life, but I also don't talk about it often in podcasts. And so earlier when you were asking questions and discussing our sex life, like it's just I can think back in my career at the amount of times where, for example, like if you in doing a comedy special, I've done a couple where there's showcases of 4 or 5 comedians, and so both times the directors have wanted some sort of B-roll interview. So in the green room or in the makeup room, they start asking questions and you're just supposed to improvise your answer. And like you're so focused on your set,
right?
And the amount of the material and not screwing up. And then suddenly, somebody's like, hey, we're just gonna ask a couple questions if you don't mind. You're like, well, in the way that this is going to be permanent, I wish I would have prepared a few quips. And then the last one was with my friend Ralph, and I mean, we know each other real well off stage, like partying and having a good time. And his friends Corey and Chad and he were very prolific in sharing sex stories. And then Ralph turns to me, he's like, Chuck Roy, tell him about fucking straight dudes. And I just look at the camera going like, I can't name any of them right now. Like, what are you nuts? Like you're messing with my mojo. After like the idea that I won't say anything in an interview like this is probably what attracts them. But that's my, reaction to. I don't know that I would tell the poop story either.
Oh man,
I'd be searching for, like I'd probably pass on that.
Well, so then what would be a crazy sex story that you would not want to talk about? Eric?
Right.
Yes. I see you both being like, oh, you just have like an awkward time where like you laughed in the middle of sex or something like that. Have you ever had a
No, I got one that involves poop.
When your friends
We've all got poop stories in sex. Come on.
It's
you play in the backfield to expect a little mud. Come
when
on.
your friend's joke happens during your sexual foray. So you're in the middle of your fun, and then like for example, my leg cramped up. And I believe it's a Brad Williams bit that popped in my head. And the next time I saw him, I was just like, oh man, I can't, like,
did you have the moment where you laughed during sex and it made it more awkward?
Yeah, that's the part.
They were like, what are you laughing at? And you're like, a fucking bit. It's harder to explain.
Yeah,
let's just go back to it.
You don't want, nobody wants the other person laughing if that isn't what's supposed to be happening, so the person you're with is not thrilled at the laughing.
Oh, and then they want to know the bit after you finish too. They're like, so what was that thing that you laughed about? And you're like,
right. Like I don't know. We're gonna have to check YouTube to see if this is on there. But
like, so I got this cool comedian friend of mine. Check him out. Let's watch that, and then you see if they get it.
Right. But yeah, that's my. If I'm gonna share, that's definitely.
That was a good one. That was great. Thank you.
I don't like talking during sex because I feel like there's so much else going on. It's as long as
I usually have a mouthful, so I mean it's hard.
Yeah, right. Like there's just so much going on. It's like I think the last thing we need is dialogue. Yeah. I've said before at shows that my sex talk is usually something like, Thank you so much.
That feels
Just
good.
thank you. I really appreciate it. You took your shirt off this time. Like that's kind of the things I say. But the weirdest sex story I have is somebody paid me to fuck him, and I,
That's pretty cool. Fucking
yeah, I thought it was going to be a
raw.
lot more fun than it was than it turned
It
out
turned
to
out to be
be.
super awkward.
It turned out to be a really bad night of my life because it just made I just
It's got to bust nut.
I don't
How
know.
was that a bad night? Come on now.
Wait, yeah, it's like $300 just to go and have sex.
I was
with
expecting you to
somebody.
say like $50.
No, this was
300 is a
300.
good, yeah, 300 is a good fucking pay. And
It
you got
did-
laid.
It didn't matter. I remember I was crying
Oh,
afterwards.
I'm sorry.
I'm laughing now, but this is just to think of how fucking naive I was, because I just thought, because I knew this guy before, and I knew the whole setup was he was in town for only one night, and I was working that night.
Hold on here. Hold up.
No, but he texted me and he's like, I want to see you tonight. I'll do anything to have you here. And I'm just like, I can. I said, I'm working. He says, call in sick. And I said, I can't. I need the money. And he's like, I'll give you $300 if you come and fuck me like you did last time. And so I said, I'll be there at 9.
I would have said the same thing. You made the right choice.
But I felt so horrible afterwards. I just felt like, oh God, why did I do that?
Well, it was a learning experience, right? Like, what are we doing
Yeah.
here at life but just learning how to be a person, basically.
Yeah, and I've always been fascinated with the idea of, sex workers and prostitution and what all that entails, and I still am.
I think it should be totally legalized and regulated, just like we did the marijuana.
Me too.
It's one of the oldest professions out there. Everybody's doing it. It would cause much less aggression in society if people could just bust their nut when they needed to, female and male. It doesn't matter. Everybody's got a sex drive, and everybody wants to feel, some type of compassion, some type of love and intimacy. And it's hard to find that sometimes.
Absolutely. And I feel I feel like the majority of people that do hire sex workers are after something higher than just an orgasm. I think that they do crave that intimacy, the feeling of somebody holding you, the feeling of somebody taking care of you and paying attention.
They have a
to you,
term. They have the boyfriend package. Like they have
So,
that.
I'm gonna jump in here. No. Like no, bad hunter, and no, like those are fun thoughts to have, smoking weed on a couch. But I teach at a downtown community college, and people who are victims in sex trafficking are not going to tell you about all the fun it is. And there's just a lot of science and research around how, what you just said is, it's dangerous.
Especially for people of color,
regulated
and women.
Yeah, well, if it was
I'm aware of what regulation is, and like economic policy, I wasn't lost in this. My realm is arts entrepreneurship, and so I'm not lost at what a sex worker is, but no, it's you're like I'm certain there's plenty of people who can advocate for what you're saying, but I'm happy to just point out I think differently, and in my experience, I think there's anecdotal, and then if you need me to go research it, but I can get you the academic evidence of
I
that
totally
world is
respect your
harmful.
opinion. That's a different side that I didn't really look at until you said that. But yeah, do you think there is a way though? Because look at Amsterdam. They've regulated it for how long? They've made it an actual union out there. So is there not a way to do that here and make it a safe, organized thing?
I don't think so. If that's what culture wants, then I'm sure people can regulate things, and I understand the comparison to pot and how the regulation of pot, when it happened here in Denver and what it did for businesses and whatnot. And I can understand and have empathy for wanting to legalize the other drugs and things like heroin and whatnot.
Well, we
I just think
decriminalized
tread real
mushrooms,
lightly.
and nothing really ever came about that. You know? Did you notice that? It wasn't
Yeah.
the boom like it was with marijuana. Like it just kind of came and went. And people are like, oh yeah, you can have mushrooms here and not get in trouble. You can't
Right.
sell them, you can't find
Mm.
them or do anything like that. But it was an industry that became decriminalized. Nothing was like dangerous about it. But nothing really
You know,
came of it.
mushrooms is something a person ingests in themselves. Sex, you know, definitely requires a second person. And I think you're implying that that person is suddenly free and, you know, lives this fantastic life in the regulated world of being a regulated sex worker. And
Well, I
I
mean,
doubt that to be the case.
think about strippers and like the people who choose to
I'm
be
aware.
exotic dancers.
You know, I know plenty of strippers. I've dated them.
Well,
I'm aware of the, you know, I'm wicked gay. I know what fucking is, and you know, I hear you, but understand what empathy is, what real pain is. You're
no, I get
focused
it,
on
I
the
get
guy
it.
who has to get his nut out, and
All right,
you're
no.
not focused at all on the person who's receiving that nut. And
Well,
I'm
I
trying
appreciate
to
your
advocate or speak
conversation.
up for that person. You know, just because there is a customer for heroin or, you know, the sex trade doesn't mean we have to suddenly be like, yeah, let's give it a UPC code and hurry up. I think we can, you know, try and figure out where we want to be, you know, in society and how do we want to handle those things. I wouldn't rush right down unregulation lane in the world of sex trade.
I mean,
But I do love that you said you're wicked gay.
That's a, you know, I
Like the
got
musical? Is it like the musical or just?
It could be. It could be. You know, I'm. You know, I know exactly what Grinder is and how that works. You know.
have you guys found Growler yet? Growler is much better than Grinder if you're like into bears or anything. I'm into bears and older guys, obviously. But
no.
Grinder, I
you
found
know.
it was so pretentious, and it was just like a bunch of younger twinkie guys who wanted to get their rocks off. Growlers, it's a nicer community if you ever check it out.
I'll check it. I like Scruff. I'm a big
Scruff's
Scruff
pretty
guy.
good, yeah. There's so many out there too. There's Manhunt, there's Bigger City, you know.
Back in the day, we had, and Chuck, you may remember that. I don't know how old you are, Chuck. You look like you're
50 or 48, but you know.
Jesus
50.
Christ. You look like you're 40. You look like you're young.
Yeah, I'm wicked gay.
You're-
I've laughed a lot. I've fucked a lot. I'm youthful.
Do you remember there was like a hookup thing in Boston in the Phoenix, this local newspaper that had been around forever, kind of like the Village Voice, but for Boston.
Right.
And
so
there was like
Weekly or Westward Hunter.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there was like a
Thank you for the
there was a system where you could set up a voicemail box for yourself, and it was like a singles ad, and you were just like, I'm 6'2" and I weigh 180 and I work out every day and I got blonde hair and blue eyes, hit me up. And then you would record a greeting, like saying pretty much everything that's in your ad. And then people would call you and they could be directed right to your phone,
or writing a letter. You know, was even before that. I remember having a pen pal relationship.
Yeah, it's just like, and you just, there was no picture, there was no way to send them a picture. You just had to describe yourself, and then when you get there, it's just like, all right, here I am, do you like it or not, you know? And
yeah, that is just a dealer's choice.
but I met
rough.
some really nice men that way. I met some really nice men, and I've met men.
Sorry, go for it.
I've met men in all the avenues where people say, oh, it's the worst place to find men. I found those are the best ones. Like Craigslist, I used to meet so many nice men off Craigslist, and even Grindr, when it first came out, you know, it was more of like a hookup app, you know, but I would meet really nice men on there, and I loved it, you know.
Oh yeah. What was
you know, it can be like the lesson learned can be, don't listen to what they say. So when they say you can't meet a decent person on Craigslist, they're wrong. You can, and it can happen in the gay scene. You meet people who,
How I met my partners.
you're at a place, you're talking to people and they're putting their opinion on you. And so you can listen to people, and there are those types who will always try to, naysay or tear down your idea so they can somehow become more superior. And they're not invested in you at all. They're invested in their own superiority. And the same can happen in the open mic and comedy circuit. You're hanging out at the same open mic. You're one of 40 people at 9 o'clock at a dive bar on a Monday, and people turn to each other. And you can be a loner and put out a vibe of, I'm just here, don't talk to me, or you can be social, and then suddenly you start to meet people who tell you they know everything and don't go to this mic and go to that one. And you have to learn, like, oh, like, you've been doing this 10 years, yet you've moved nowhere. You've moved up not at all. So what I used to hear your advice, and now I got to be thinking, maybe I have to find people who are advancing in the spaces where I want to be, and ask them the questions so that I can find out what the real truth is. So, I can see how, for the people who are listening who are not, avid users of Grindr or the Scruff, and are wondering how does this apply to comedy? It's, to me, it's
similar.
having to learn how to
you made.
having to learn how to be yourself and express who you want to be. And it doesn't happen right away. Oftentimes, I had a 25-minute act that turned into 45 when I got hot,
right?
And I had a very, personality and a viewpoint of gay life. And then that perspective changed when I met, other people who were mentors. And then I met more people who, changed the world and took on, I understood their perspective and background. So there's something about being authentic in stand-up comedy that can take a long time to get to, but it's one of the great rewards of,
well, like I was saying earlier, I'm not
comedy.
sure we were recording, was comedy is one of those things that is just so accepting as long as you're funny. Doesn't matter what gender, race, height, weight, what you look like, as long as you're funny, comedy will accept you. And that's what's so cool about it. And what I wanted to know is, like, what's the hang like when people do know that you're openly gay? And there's a bunch of other straight males. Usually nowadays they're pretty cool, but I'm sure back in the day it wasn't as accepting as it was. Was there any ever, like, hard times?
For me, I got fired right away from the worst booking agency in Boston and hired that night by the best comedy club in the city and one of the guys who started comedy. Word spread. Jimmy Dunn was sitting across from Dick Doherty, who fired me. Jimmy Dunn is a successful comedian to this day. But Jimmy just was so offended by what he overheard on the phone. He heard me getting fired and he went, "Dick, you're wrong. That kid is the only person doing new stuff this year. Like, it's not like we got 30 funny gay kids roaming around, like, what is your problem?" And he called folks. I heard from Greg Fitzsimmons by the end of the week. I didn't know him, but Greg said he wasn't going to leave New York to do this particular show unless I was rehired. And what I noticed is every Boston, the way I say it, and it's certainly not true, but every guy who had an act that was full of fag and bits about AIDS were the ones who pulled me aside, advocated publicly for me, pulled me aside to be like, what happened to you was wrong. Nobody, it doesn't matter that you're a fag. You should just be, you should be a fag, man. And you stay true to you. So it was, to me, very funny to hear, where I could get approached oftentimes by the liberal Cambridge types with some of the most homophobic statements I'd heard. And they'd wonder, why was I working over at the main stage? Shouldn't I be in Cambridge with the rest of the clever people? And you go, the 500 seat theater is that way. I'm trying to work there. Why do I have to give up on being who I am in order to find, sit with this trendy little crowd? And I think you can find that in the gay world as well. Everybody or you can feel like everybody's like, oh, you got to go to Tracks on Fridays, and turns out the other bars are open, and you don't even have to go to a bar. You know, or you can just go to
turns out
Nolan's Irish
Daddy's
Pub.
is much better.
You know,
especially if you're a
right?
younger guy.
But you know, I also like Nolan's Irish Pub, one of my
No,
favorite
that's right.
places to bring a fella after a show. It was, you know, what people would call a straight bar, but it's John Nolan's house, and you didn't disrespect anybody in there. You know, so I was never once disrespected for being who I was, and we were never discouraged for being there on a date. And to me, that's my experience in comedy. Is like, I thought there was a huge group out there in the world that didn't give a shit. You know, they're like, you're gay. What's next? Now make me laugh. I don't care.
Yeah, can you be funny now? Like, we
Tell
got
me
that.
about it.
Put
What's
that
funny?
yeah.
What's funny? And so it has me allow, like, an example is I can start a set by saying I'm dating a stockbroker. He's a strong buy, and the audience is right there. They know, they're like, okay, that's how it is in his world. Whereas I'm glad I never built an act based on like, or you know, I worked hard to not have an act that's built around I'm gay and you're shocked and or upset about it as an audience, because I find that to be really unfair. A good, you know, good bulk of the crowd wasn't upset or offended, you know, and wanted to know more. And it just took society a long time, you know, for that was not the case for people before me.
Right.
You know, we needed people like Bob Smith to come out. We needed people like Ellen to come out. And, you know, I just could forecast or see in my time, well, if they're out, I don't need to be doing that work. You know, I need to be telling jokes the way I want to.
Nice. So we talked a little bit about gay bars. What was your guys' first gay bar experience? You guys remember?
Oh God, I was 18 and
what? Oh,
yeah.
lucky bastard.
I was 18 and it was this bar called Dillinger's in Ohio, Northeast Ohio. And for some reason, this little town that I grew up next to had like 5 gay bars, and everybody would just, it wasn't a huge gay population, but we would all kind of go, there was like 2 lesbian bars and 3 gay bars. And one was like, if you just wanted to drink all night, one was if you wanted to dance all night. And the third was if you wanted to like fuck somebody in the back room, you know, like it was that kind of vibe. But the bar that I went to,
Charlie's Eagles, that's what it is.
It's, well, the one I went to was really trying to be posh, but I remember this was in 1985, and I went in one night and everybody was drinking out of plastic cups, and I was just like, sign. What's going on, you know? And they're like, oh well, you know, we don't want to take a chance that people are getting AIDS through drinking glasses.
Oh Jesus Christ!
Wow.
And so they had everyone with paper cups, and I thought that was. And just to think back, I mean, that was absurd, you know? And so that was my first, and I was scared to death. I would just go and look at all the really good looking men. And I had no idea how to make myself attractive to men. I didn't really look at myself that way at that point in my life. And I just was like more of an observer and just afraid of my own shadow.
Damn. Well, that's like,
you know what? You hear these stories about like these gay dudes that are like 15 and 16 and they sneak into their clubs and they're fucking everybody. And I was not like that at all. You know, I was scared of my own shadow, and I, you know, hats off to those people, but I'm glad the way I turned out. You know, I really like the path that I took, you know, and I didn't always feel that way, but I really like it now.
Chuck, how about you? Do you remember your first gay bar?
It's got to be people from the comedy club world, you know, took me over to gay bars. One, you know, Boston comedian who was closeted, you know, but everybody clearly knew, you know, when he'd fly home, you know, I'd work with him, and then it's like all the waitresses, especially I can remember Sunday nights, you know, it's like you finish early, or compared to the rest of the nightclub world, you're done at 9 or 10. And the bars are still open, you know. So on Sunday nights, the waitresses would all be like, "Are we going to a gay bar?" And even the door guys would come along. It was a very, for me, I
Gay bars are
always
fun. I mean,
it was fun,
there's no
and then
denying it. There's so much better than
turns out
straight bars.
comedy clubs are just way more fun
Yeah.
for me, and Boston comedy clubs were just way more fun. I understand how someone turns of age, where someone figures out who they are and they immerse themselves into the world of gay clubs. But I had immersed myself in the world of politics, or after that, the world of comedy clubs, and got my identity there.
Right.
And then we went to, gay bars, as well as going to an Irish bar, where the place where if you work in comedy clubs, there's usually a place they go after the shows to have their evening cocktail. And it's a real insider thing. It's real.
Yep.
You're part of a small community that, it's a lot of the same experiences people can experience going to gay bars, but it's just very much centered around comedy and making laughter happen. And so, I love a good gay bar, but I love going to one after having roared and laughed at a comedy club.
Oh yeah.
How about you, Hunter?
Well, I started to go into bars like at 19, just sneaking in because I loved alcohol. And so when I finally got to a gay bar, I was introduced to this whole world of like, oh, this is what I've been missing, is anonymous gay sex in the bathroom, all the stereotypical stuff where you were just like, oh, cool, I can be myself here. I can dance with my hands up, and
Right.
yeah. And there was no fights. There was not like the
That's
weird.
the truth, is, and Eric, you probably, like in Boston, the best part of, like, was Saturday night fights.
Oh my god.
I worked in Maine a lot, Portland, Maine, and I'd work 7 to 5 at the grocery store, fly home, and then get up to Maine, and you're doing 2 or maybe 3 shows. And so go get a slice of pizza in between shows, and there's going to be a fight, and like a brawl of people pouring out of a place with fists flying. And that doesn't happen on this side of the Mississippi as much. So there's something about Kansas that levels people out.
I think the closest I've ever gotten to getting into a fight at a gay bar was when someone puked on my shoe in the stall next to me. And I just asked him to apologize. I was like, ew, that was kind of gross, bro. Can you apologize? And his boyfriend said something snippy. And I think I squared up on him. And he was like, are you really trying to fight in a gay bar? And it put me on my heels so much that I was like, oh, no, absolutely not. My bad. I just wanted to apologize. That
I wonder why
I ended up apologizing to him.
Like Denver, had a burst of new gay bars open, and I'm wondering why it's not going the other way.
Right.
Why on earth do we have to isolate ourselves at a bar? Like, why aren't you just going with your friends to the place?
Right.
And your friends occupy their gender, their role, like your friend. Why on earth do we have a pride parade and a march for equality when the next thing we're going to do is tell, fat people, you've got to be at the bear bar, and twink, you belong over there. Right. And, daddy, you belong at this, and straight people don't come here. Like, I don't grasp it at all. We needed a gay bar when we had no liberty. But if we have our liberty, why aren't we just out there, at
I've never really thought about it like that.
At Applebee's,
But there is something pretty niche about, going to the Eagle or the Wrangler and having the double-sided urinals. That's not
right. I get it.
A straight bar. You don't get that there.
Yeah, I get it, but like, if on an open mic,
it's like you could wear leather at the Eagle. That's like where you're expected to wear leather at. And if that's their kink, then they should have a spot that they can go and call their own, don't you think?
Sure.
It's kind of a nice homage to the history of where we as gay people were. You know, I
Right.
think that bars is whenever I'm in a gay bar, that's always in my mind about the fact that this was the only way that guys could really meet up and be themselves. And the history of that is just fascinating and immense. And there's just so many stories there, you
Oh,
know. But
yeah.
I remember the thing I liked about bars was that each bar had its own kind of not only dress code and whatnot, but like a vibe, like a particular. There was a bar called Napoleon's in Boston that was, they called it the Wrinkle Room because a lot of older guys went there. But
Shit, that would have been my place.
it was a piano bar, and it was always packed, and it was so great to go in there and hear some queen who
Mhm.
sings like an angel
Hmm.
sing, you know, Les Mis, and everybody's weeping. Like, I
Yep.
mean, how can you can't have a moment like that
At a
anywhere
straight, you can't.
else.
Yeah, you can't do that at a straight bar in Boston or like a
Oh,
pub or
I
something. You
tried
couldn't
it
do
in
it.
Whole Foods last
Oh
week,
no, you
and
didn't.
Right. But
it bombed.
that's why I live here in Denver, because you're describing Charlie Brown's, which is a
Yep.
patio bar off a hotel in Capitol Hill, was
Yep.
what used to be the gayborhood. But it
Used to
just,
be. Yeah, I don't know what
you know,
happened to
like
it.
it was just another one of those great patio bars. Denver is a city where you can really just enjoy long walks from
Hmm.
various excellent establishments of drinking. And if you're like, if you're part of that nightclub scene, invariably folks are going to go like, you want to go to Charlie Brown's? And
Yep.
you know what it means. Like, you're going to go hear somebody play the piano and sing those, songs from the swing era.
Yep.
And um, it, to
Well, it's kind of
me,
like Hamburger
that's
Mary's. You go there because you're expecting an over the top drag queen kind of performance. Plus, you're gonna get some fries and a burger. And it's
right.
yeah.
That was the place that folks, when I was on the road, if I met a straight couple that just resonated with my act, and they'd be like, we have to take you to Hamburger Mary's. And, for in that era, for them, it was just a way of being open-minded, and they're going to go for that brunch, and that's who Hamburger Mary's could really draw
Oh yeah.
across the country
Oh,
for
those
that brunch.
macaroni cheese wedges. Oh god, I
Mhm.
miss those.
You're gonna like what today's society might call the woke people, but in the '90s,
My goddamn generation who ruined
you
everything.
know,
Yeah, I know. We
in
suck.
the '90s, it was just, I recall, folks say, like, they were doing everything they could not to offend me, or say anything stupid around the gay guy,
Tiptoeing
and
around
they're
it.
like,
Yeah.
but they wanted to take me to a Hamburger Mary's, and I recall that I associate that chain with those good feelings of like
Oh yeah.
not being fired or kicked out or booed, but quite the
Hmm.
opposite, of people going like, we got to hang out with you. And then I also, like, there was an old gay bar here called JR's that
I
had a
remember
terrific
JR's. Yeah.
patio.
That had the double
And
patio. Yep. I remember
mhm,
that one. That was
mhm.
right when I was coming out. That was like 10 years
And
ago.
even then, like, it wasn't hard to get the comedy club folks to be like, yeah, we'll go to JR's,
Well,
and
it had a very like New Orleans bar feel to it because of that
mhm,
upper deck level. You could stand outside and look on the patio. It was great. I loved it.
yeah.
They had a
And
terrible rum and coke because they had their own coke people. Like it wasn't the standard Coca Cola. It was
and
like
then
some weird. Yeah, it was a
right.
weird.
And then I recall the era of the Wrangler, which was the
Oh,
bear bar
I miss
downtown
the
that had
Wrangler.
a super popular beer bust. And
Yes.
that one doesn't, it's like straight people knew about, but they're like, this is way too gay for
Mm,
us, And I recall after 9/11 being here in Denver, and uh, when Top Run would drive, that's the Denver fire truck that I guess drove to the towers. It leads most of the parades here in town.
mm.
So they're the alpha of firefighters, and they purposely drive by the beer
Oh
bus and honk their
god.
horn in order to hear 500 queens just screaming, "Woo, firemen!" And it was so, liberating back then, because you remember how much, like, the Republicans owned firemen and
Yep.
freedom and everything, right? And you're like, fuck you, like, firemen, are chasing the screams of queens.
Yeah, that's really funny to
every
hear, because the last
Sunday.
time I went on a gay cruise, the Coast Guard did the same exact thing, and they had their big old guns out and they had their shirts off and they were driving by on their boats, and everybody on the boat was screaming, and it was like, man, how
Hysterical.
Pavlovian are we sometimes?
Right. But, it's true. And then I also find it very liberating and very
Yeah.
much like, I wish the rest of the world would see this. The folks who, speak poorly of us, or, try to tell us that, it's not okay to be gay or whatever. You go, well,
We didn't
I don't
choose
know.
this.
The firemen don't seem to be so pissed about it. And
Yeah, I think we
they-
got some other things going on in our nation that we need to work on before we get
Yeah,
to this
you-
one,
yeah, I'm definitely, I don't know. That's how I feel.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you guys, man. We've been going for a long time. Is there
Right,
anything you
I've
guys want to
been-
plug?
Oh, shows. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Fun.
this guy that works at the 7-Eleven.
Tell me about him. How is he?
What I don't really have anything to plug per se right now. I'm gonna reopen my show in May,
Nice.
and it's called Dugout. It's just a local show here in LA, and
Oh yeah.
that's about it. You can see me I'm in a movie called Out on Stage. It's on Amazon Prime.
Oh no
Oh, good
shit.
for you.
And then my set is streaming on Pluto TV, which, if you don't know Pluto TV, that means you don't live in any low-cost neighborhoods. But Pluto TV is like the free TV thing was supposed to catch on like wildfire. And
Oh, it's kind of
Here
like
we are.
Tubi. Tubi's the same thing, where it's like, I'd never heard of it, but it's got a bunch of shit on there that you would never expect. So
yeah, and it's so weird because you can't. It's very hard to navigate. Pluto is just, it takes some digging to find my set, but it's in there. It's in there.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's awesome. Chuck, anything from you?
If you're new and want to try comedy, my Zoom open mic is called Open Mic, MIKE, after Mike Langworthy. You can just search it on Eventbrite.
Nice.
Register for a free guest spot ticket.
Oh, I tried to get on the
Probably.
damn Eventbrite thing, and it sent me to a different link. So maybe take a look at that one.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's I have a bit where I say that I have a new pitch for a gay porn, and I call it Open Mic, and it's just this dude named Mike in the back of a coffee shop. Everybody gets 5 minutes.
Right. Well, our show's just about the same.
Hell yeah.
Open them up.
Right.
Hell yeah.
Well, thanks
thank
for
you, gentlemen,
inviting me.
so
Nice
much. Yeah, I appreciate
nice
you
to
guys
meet you,
coming
Eric.
on.
Nice to meet you, Chuck. I'm going to follow you on all the socials. And
Oh, cool. I look forward to watching your special on Amazon.
Hell
Nice.
yeah, guys. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys.
All right. Thank
Have a
you.
good
We'll
one.
see you later.
Bye.